Hi, my name is Cameron Rowe, and I'll be walking you through my ADTA 5250 final. If you hear my voice crack or it sounds a little hoarse or scratchy, I'm sorry. I've been fighting off a cold for the past couple days. For this first section, we were told to make a graph that had ourselves and then our relationship to 15 other people. It said that we were allowed to use whatever kind of graph we wanted to, but I decided to use a graph similar to the one that was shown. Um, as you know, my name is Cameron, and the 15 people that I have around me, I do know, but their names have been changed a little bit, just for, confidentiality and whatnot. Um, as you can see, how I've explained in my paragraph below here is that these thick lines are people that I am friends with. And so you see I have a thick line with everybody that is in this circle, and then the thinner lines are actually thin and dashed lines, and those are showing people that know each other but are not friends. And then you can see people that are not connected at all, like as you see on the left hand side, Andrew and Christy, they don't have a line between them at all, and that's because those two people don't know each other. This graph was really interesting to make. It took a lot of time. I did have color on it originally, but I felt like it made it too hard to read, especially when you get over to on the right side from Mads at the very bottom up to Jackie, which is on the right hand side. Those little lines in there just kept getting lost with each other, so I just decided to leave it gray just for better viewing. In the second part, there was different questions for each part that they wanted us to do, and so as you can see, I did all of these in Tableau like what it was supposed to. The first question that was asked was, what are our FBI codes? And as you can see, I have the FBI codes pulled up in Tableau, and it shows that they go from 01A all the way down to 26. Sorry if you saw the ding. The next one wanted to know what our primary types of crime were, and again I pulled that up in Tableau and it made a list, and you can see that it goes from arson all the way to weapons violation. Those graphs were pretty easy to make. You just had to pull over the data into the table and it just made it for you. The next one that they wanted to know was the total number of criminal cases for each FBI code collected in the data set. That one was also pretty easy to make. I just pulled the FBI code to be my x-axis, or my dimension, and then the district count of case numbers. I made my measurement, and as you can see, they go from under 1,000 at 0K all the way up to 12, all the way up to 1,200. And I thought that was really cool. When you look at this graph in Tableau, you can hover over all of these bar graphs and it'll tell you exactly what the FBI code stands for and exactly how many of them there are. I think that's pretty cool. The next one that you see is the total number of criminal cases for each primary type of crime. To me, this is a more detailed version of the graph that we just looked at. As you can see, my my dimensions are the primary type of crime, which again is all from arson all the way down to weapons violations, and then my measurement was the distinct count of the case number. And so as you can see here, theft is going to be our highest one, while non-criminal activity and non-criminal subject are going to be our lowest, along with obscenity. Again, if you pull this graph up in Tableau, you can hover over each bar and it'll tell you the exact number that it is, and again, pretty cool. This next one was probably my favorite graph for this section, and it wanted to know, this one was the one where it wanted to know the total number of criminal cases for each FBI code, and then I color coded it by the primary type of crime. I'm gonna zoom in real quick so you guys can see this a little bit better. So as you can see, our dimension is going to be that FBI code at the bottom from, again, 01A all the way over to 26, and then our measurement is again going to be that distinct count of case numbers. And then over here on the right hand side, you can see the color key for the primary type of crime that's happened. And as you can see in some of these, like FBI code 26 has a couple different colors in it, which means that a couple of these primary types of crime fall under the same FBI code. And again, when you go into Tableau, you can hover over the bars and the specific colors, and it'll tell you all of the detail about that specific interaction on there. Again, this was probably like the funnest graph that I got to make, just because I like how it looks. It's easy to read. It's very digestible for a viewer. Sorry about the dinging. I'm trying to get that to stop. This next one is the last part. No, not the last part. This is just the period that the data set has been collected in. And as you can see, it's from 2001 to 2015, and you can see from about 2001 to about 2008, it was pretty much a steady decrease in crime. And then 2008 all the way down to 2014, which is down here, there's a more rapid decrease. And then in 2014 all the way down to 2015, crime took a deep nosedive. And I think that's pretty interesting to look at, considering just the climate of today. Everybody just assumes that crime is more rapid, and that's not necessarily true. It's just reported on more. And I think that's a really interesting graph to look at, just to kind of see what we think of our crime versus what was actually happening, which is a decrease in crime. The next one that we had to make was total number of criminal cases each year that the data was collected. So I have the distinct count of criminal case numbers as my dimension, and then I have the year as my measurement. This bar graph is pretty self-explanatory. You can see that in 2001 and 2002 had the most, and 2015 now has the least. And you can still see that steady decrease like you saw on the bar graph, and then the distinct nosedive, or on the line graph, and then the distinct nosedive still happens on this bar graph. That's it for part 2. Part 3 was another multiple part question. For question 1 of part 3, we were told to make a scatter plot with, let me grab the data right now. We were told to make a scatter plot with the sales records CSV, and I thought a scatter plot for this was really interesting, but also very helpful. As you can see, scatter plots give you different shapes or icons to represent your categories. So you have the circle representing furniture, squares representing office supplies, and the cross representing the technology. And then everything is color coded over here, so you're gonna have 12 different icons sitting on this map that each represents something else, and then it's gonna be by the dimension of sales and the measure of profit. Again, pulling this up in Tableau, you can see what each of these little things stand for, and just by looking at this graph, you can see that office supplies for the West region had the highest profit and also the highest sales. And then you can see that furniture for the Central region had the lowest amount of profit, but not the lowest amount of sales. That was actually furniture for the South region. This graph is really easy to look at. It's very pleasing to the eye. I enjoyed making it. I think this is something that most CEO types or SVPs, as we were talking about in the prompt, would be readily accessible for them. In the next section, and then here is the all the information that the SVP would want. It's broken up by region and then by each category, so furniture sales, office supply sales, and technology sales, with their profit and then, oh, sorry, their sales and then their profit. And I've done that for each region, as you can see here. The second question for part 3 wanted us to make the same graph, but then it also wanted us to make the segment of consumer, corporate, and home office. So the graph essentially became a 3-parter. So you still have a dimension of sales and a measurement of profit along with your details of region and category, but you also have a new dimension of segment to break them up. So consumer, corporate, and home office. And this one is going to be more readily accessible, especially if an SVP or another corporate type just wanted to look at your sales for the home office. They could just look at that section of it and not be confused about everything that's happening on the graph. Same for the consumer and corporate segments. The prompt also asked us to look at each segment and then the profit for each region in each segment, and so this list right here goes through that. Sorry guys, like I said, I was battling a cold this week. Part 4 was also a 2-part. I chose to do the paper version of it instead of doing any code or anything like that. The first question of part 4, I should say, wanted to know or wanted me to discuss focusing on how to tell stories efficiently or effectively with data visualization, focusing on the 3 aspects of visual data, messaging, and interactivity. In this, I go through and talk about how we talked about in discussion 1, that science, engineering, and art are all connected, and I think working through this class this semester, we can all testify that we've had to do a whole lot of science, a little bit of engineering when we've made these graphs, and then when we got into color coding and icon and pixel representation, it became art. And I think that's really cool to see that blossom and see each of us be able to do those things. I go on to say that same thing right here. Anytime we created a graph, we're attempting to show somebody what the graph is representing in an easily consumable form. And that's our job as data scientists, is to make that easily. And so our message we want to have as easy as possible. Like, we don't ever want somebody to be confused about what we're talking about. And I talk about that in here. And then the next thing that we do is the interactivity of a graph. We love, love, love when all of our graphs are like you can like play with them and you can click on them and it'll take you to different websites or pull up more data for you. People really love those graphs just because they keep your attention more. Down here, if you scroll a little bit further, I actually give you an example of this graph, and this is a hyperlink, as you can see that popped up. When you click on it, I'm going to pull this in here for us. When you pull on it and you scroll down a little bit, you can actually come in here and play with it, and you can see that when you hover over each color, it actually highlights it, and then you can click on it. I won't do that right now. You guys can go in and do that if you'd like. I thought this was a really cool representation of what you could do with interactivity graphs. I gave you guys another example of a heat map graph. Sorry about that cut out. I ran out of time and had to go back. So what I was talking about is this heat graph right here. You can click on it, go play with it. It's really cool. Each of these little dots will show you the depth, station, and magnitude. Coming down to part 4, question 2, it wanted us to talk about design and best practices. I basically go to say best practices to make it readable, easy to look at, fun to look at. This is an example of a bad graph. You can't really see anything, you can't read anything, it's hard to understand. And then I come down here and I give you a better example. Minimal text, not transparent, very easy to read, very easy to consume. And then go down, those are my references if you want to go see any of the things that I referenced. But other than that, thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye.